You know what? Let's talk a little bit about free verse. So, why is free verse the way to tell this story, and when did you realize? Because I remember a few drafts where you went back and forth a little bit between straight prose and then back to free verse. So, why is free verse the best way to tell Ellie's story?
There's a couple of reasons. One of which is that it's just who I am, really. This is how I think, this is how I write, this is how I see the world, really. Prose, the problem for me with prose is that you spend a lot of time with what I call fluff, and I don't mean that in a bad way for anyone who writes prose, but it's the stuff you have to throw in there to make it all cemented together, right? Like if someone, okay, so if someone's in a car or a boat and they've got to get from the boat to the car, right? You got to see them walk up the plank. You got to see it, you know what I mean? And it's like, that walking up the plank and that walking into the car and buckling their seatbelts or all that little minutia, to me, feels fluffy as a writer. I just want to get down to the heart of it. I want them on the boat. I don't want to see, I'm just going to tell you they're on the boat and you're not going to know how they got there and you're going to have to be okay with it, and because, your mind will fill in the rest anyway, right? And
teleportation, obviously.
Right. Exactly. Thank you. I'll put that in all my books. But I just want to get to the heart of the story and get to the meat and the bones. And poetry allows me to do that. Free verse allows me to do that. And also because I've always been a big fan of poetry. And it's funny because, when I review my life, my mom, I had a bunch of her stuff and she's in a nursing home now. And so I keep going through all these different papers and stuff that she had. And she kept everything I've ever written in my whole life. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've written so much poetry over the years. Why didn't I just naturally write this in poetry? But I never realized you could until I read Sonia Soane's Stop Pretending, What Happened When My Big Sister Went Crazy. And so when I opened up her book and it was in free verse, I thought, oh, well, then that's what I'm going to do. I can do that. I didn't know you could. You know what I mean? It was like, I thought there was this rule. Everything had to be in prose. And then I realized it didn't have to be. And, the book had been out for several years by the time I found it, but it was like revolutionary for me. And I thought, oh, thank God, because that's how I really want to tell the story. And that's how it's coming to me, And so if that answers your question.
It does. And there you are able to convey a lot of information very fast. It made me feel very much like an overwriter, because I am, appropriately so. But you'll put an excerpt from the radio, and we're in a car. That makes sense. And we don't need to know what kind of car. We just need to know that's not what the point of this individual poem is. And then Sonia Soames, I know that she's got a lovely blurb along with previous guests, Podblaster Traman. But Sonia Soames has got a blurb on there. I know you reached out, you got in touch with her because she's thanked pretty profusely in the acknowledgments. Yeah. What's the Sonia Soames story?
Okay, so I read her book, and I don't know if you've ever read Stop Pretending, but it's like, I don't know how many times I've read that book. I love that book. And so I love that book. And then I'm a big fan of Highlights Foundation, which offers workshops for writers. And I heard that she was going to be teaching on free verse. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make that happen. So you have to apply and all that. But I got to be at her workshop and, get her advice on writing and tips and tricks and all kinds of, instruction. And it was amazing. And we bonded and we became like, friends. And so she wanted to stay in touch, and we did. And then, she has just been like a little cheerleader and for me ever since. And she's, oh, this is so good. And so they said, do you know any authors who you think would blurb for you? And I was like, I'll ask Sonia. And they're like, oh, that would be a good one, because, Sonia Stones is really good. And she was so happy to do it. And she's so wonderful and amazing. And then ironically, Carrie Ann Holt, who also wrote a blurb for Starfish on the back, I met her at that same workshop for novel and verse. And she had her first book that had come out. It was the book Zombie Eats Brains or whatever it is. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. I can't think of the title offhand.
It's all in haiku, I believe. I think that's the one that's all in haiku. But so that's how I became friends with Carrie Ann Holt, and we stayed, we're social. She's in Texas, so we're social media buddies. But so she's the one who, and she also wrote a blurb for me. So that was a very, very amazing workshop to be a part of. It was Linda Oatman High as well, and Virginia You're a Wolf, who wrote Free Verse, Make Lemonade series. So it was an amazing workshop to be a part of.